Hey, what's up everyone, it's Philmeyer. I'd like to show you my level 100 White Mage controller crossbar layout with detail on how I came to it. This is what's working best for me at the moment, and the goal is that this tour may help you with your setup. This video is not a guide to the White Mage job itself and expects you to have a decent understanding of its abilities. If you're new to my channel, I have a series of videos that are all about using the controller in Final Fantasy XIV. I'll drop a playlist link in the video description, and I recommend checking them out to get the most of this video. I do want to mention that I use a standard PlayStation 5 controller when I play. If you're using an alternative controller setup, your layout preferences may differ. There are several concepts I focus on whenever I set up a crossbar layout. I strive for performance and efficiency, but it also needs to be fun to use. For performance, I focus on placing instant cast skills on my face buttons so I can more easily use them when I'm moving. I also cluster skills that I often combo together. Lastly, I try to keep my controller layouts somewhat consistent between the jobs I play and aim for keeping similar skills on the same hotbar positions between jobs. This isn't always optimal or even possible, so it's something that I aim for, but it's not a requirement. Alright, with the preamble out of the way, let's get into the controller layout, starting with the right side of the base hotbar. Whenever possible, I like putting a job's primary attack on the left face button because it feels most comfortable to me, and I usually only move it from that position when optimizing a layout. So for White Mage, this is where I've placed Glare 3. I've placed Dia on the bottom face button for a couple of reasons. It's arguably White Mage's secondary attack, used second most often during boss fights. It's also an instant cast skill, so I like to have it on a face button to refresh its effect when I am moving. This is also the reason I've placed Assize on the right face button, so I again can more easily use it while moving, especially since its cooldown is off global. As of Dawntrail, I've moved Presence of Mind to the top face button in this cluster. This is where I used to keep Holy, but since Presence of Mind can now share the same hotbar button with Glare 4 and instant cast ability, it became a higher priority to have it here and be more easily accessible. This also makes it feel more natural to alternate between Glare 3 and Glare 4, specifically when I'm changing my position on the battlefield. Just above this cluster, on the right side of the double crossbar, is where I keep skills that I also want to be able to access quickly, but use less often than those on the base crossbar. Afflatus Misery sits in the left face button in this cluster because it's again an instant cast skill, but also because this location helps with muscle memory. Since I use the left face button for Glare 3, it just feels natural to shift to the double crossbar and use the same button for another attack. The remaining face buttons here are Thin Air, Swiftcast, and Raise. Keeping these clustered together makes chaining them as a combo quick and efficient. Now looking at the directional pad side of the base crossbar, this is where I keep my core cure spells. These have a cast time, so they make sense to assign to the directional pad. Cure 3 also does splash healing, so I keep it on the bottom button for some consistency with Medica, which we'll talk about in a moment. With Dawntrail, I've moved Holy 3 to the left D-pad button from its previous spot, which was the top face button, now occupied by Presence of Mind. Without Swiftcast, Holy has a long cast time, so I've moved it to make way specifically for Glare 4. At first I resisted this change as I liked having my main attack skills grouped together, but pretty quickly after making the change I found it still feels intuitive, and actually it even feels a little more natural to cast Holy while using my right thumb to manipulate the camera and adjust my view of the battlefield. After getting used to Holy on this button, I apply the same concept to some of my other job layouts. Now let's move to the left trigger side of the base crossbar. I keep Medica on directional buttons for the same reasons as my cure spells, as that they have cast times. The same thing goes with Esuna, which is also in this cluster. Benediction is cast instantly, so it's an outlier in this cluster, but with its long recast time, I don't end up using it as frequently as other abilities. Most often, I use it to heal a just resurrected teammate, and I'm already using the directional buttons to target them, so it just makes sense to have Benediction on one of these buttons. This frees up the face buttons on this side of the cross hotbar for skills that have more priority to be there. Afflatus Rapture, Afflatus Solace, and Tetragrammaton have no cast times, and I use them very often. With the new Aetherial Shift skill being added in Dawntrail, I've placed it on the right face button. With this being a targetless gap closer, it's important to ensure I'm facing the correct direction before using it, so I don't accidentally dash off into something bad. It's easiest to do that if I'm already moving in the direction I want to go and then hit the hotbar button to dash. This is also a skill I use to dodge out of danger, so I want to be able to react quickly and use it as efficiently as I can. The skills I keep on the double crossbar above this cluster are there for similar reasons. First, Plenary Indulgence is set to the top face button for comboing with Afflatus Rapture. If I want to supercharge Afflatus Rapture, it feels intuitive to shift into the double crossbar, use Plenary Indulgence, then drop down to my base hotbar, hitting the same button to activate the skill. Since Plenary Indulgence also buffs up the Medica skills, which I use often, it helps that they are on the same trigger side of the cross hotbar, so there's just one less thing I need to do with my hands to combo them. Just like the skills below them, Divine Benison and Aquaveil are on face buttons so I can more easily use them while moving. I often cast these to shield tanks before a big hit, and I also often use them on myself for extra protection while I'm trying to get out of a dangerous position, so it's important to have these accessible to use without interrupting movement. Regen is a staple of my kit and is also cast instantly, so I keep it on the left face button. Whenever I shield a tank with Divine Benison or Aquaveil, I usually also refresh Regen on them. Having it in the same button cluster helps make that combo more efficient. It's also convenient to refresh Regen on myself or whichever party member I have targeted when I'm moving. Now let's look at the skills on the far left of the double crossbar. Repose is a skill I use infrequently, usually only when adventuring solo or with one other party member who I have tight coordination and communication with, so this skill is less of a priority. It definitely warrants a spot on the directional pad and double crossbar. The down directional button is where I keep Temperance, which as of Dawntrail is also shared with Divine Caress. Even though these are both instant casts, is less critical than other skills and they are accessible during movement. Temperance also has a lengthy recast time, so the pair can't be used as often as other skills. These are both reasons they sit in this hotbar position, as other abilities just have more priority. For similar reasons, Lucid Dreaming is on the right directional button. Even though I use this in every major battle, its recast cycle is long and maintaining movement while activating it is not critical. Asylum takes the spot on the top directional button. Prior to Dawntrail, I kept this on the face button that is now occupied by Aetherial Shift, but Aetherial Shift is definitely more of a priority for a face button now. I tend to both move my character and the camera after activating Asylum in order to place it properly on the ground, but the small initial interruption of first activating the skill with a directional button is minor, so it works out. Onto the final cluster of the double cross hotbar. Liturgy of the Bell takes a spot in the top directional button for the same reasons as Asylum. Also, having them both be on the same directional button and also on the double crossbar helps with muscle memory when using them. Using either a left or right double trigger press to get these skills feels consistent and intuitive. On the right directional button is Surecast. It's another instant cast buff that I use in most major boss fights, but it's not critical to be moving while activating it, especially since I normally activate it to avoid being moved by knockback attacks. Having this on the same directional pad button as Lucid Dreaming makes it feel intuitive to me, as they are both self-buffs with long recast times. Rescue is on the left directional pad button mostly because it needs to be somewhere, and my other White Mage skills take priority. When I do use Rescue, it is normally a cautious and intentional use of the skill rather than a fast twitch reaction. I'll use it when I'm already in a safe location after I've had a moment to observe a party member that is in a notably poor spot. In addition, because it is on the same directional button on the double crossbar as Repose, which is rarely used during boss trials, it helps to ensure I don't accidentally miscast this skill and rescue someone into a pit instead. At this point, all my class and job abilities have found their places, which leaves the down directional button in this cluster free. I use it to keep emergency potions handy, and in the case of White Mage, I keep ether potions for some MP safety during fights. So those are my core combat hotbars for White Mage, using both the base crossbar and double crossbar. To go with this core layout, the face button cluster of one half of my expanded hotbar is where I keep additional actions that I need to be able to access quickly. These are shared across all jobs. Here I have macros to set a focus target, switch to the focus target, and assist targeting. I keep sprint on the top face button for consistency with the default jump button, as well as for easier access when I'm moving. Finally, I have a second pair of combat hotbars that I can manually switch to in battle. The double crossbar in this pair is shared across all jobs and is where I keep limit break, markers, and chocobo commands. The base crossbar in this pair is job specific, and this is where I place any additional potions and food that I may want to access during battle, but don't necessarily need to do it super quickly. Alright, so that's my current level 100 White Mage controller cross hotbar layout. I hope you found something here that might help you with your layout, whether it's for White Mage or another job. Thanks for watching the video, and like always, keep adventuring and take care.